In the land of Jin Yuan, numerous races coexist, among which the human clan, demon clan, and beastman clan are the most powerful. For centuries, the flames of war have never ceased as they vie for more land and resources. In this chaotic era, our protagonist is born a hybrid of human, demon, and beast. What experiences will he go through, and what fate awaits him? Chapter 1: My Childhood. My grandfather was one of the mightiest warriors in the Beastman clan's Baiman Legion. 80 to 90 years ago, he single-handedly killed a dragon, earning him titles like the foremost warrior of the Beastmen and Baiman's champion. Standing at over 5 meters tall, he was virtually unmatched on the continent back then. To counter the might of humans, intermarriages occurred between the Beastman clan and Demon clan. My grandfather was a part of these political unions. Through such a marriage, he wed the daughter of a concubine of the demon emperor, my grandmother. My grandmother was the person I felt closest to in this world, if she were still alive. She should have been 85 this year, and she was the best person to me. At 16, she married my grandfather, who was already in his 40s. She often told me she was a political pawn. It was clear that coming to the Beastman realm wasn't her choice, but I'm glad she did. Without her, where would I be? My father was my grandfather's only son, inheriting his exceptional lineage. Standing at over 5 meters tall, even now, his arms are thicker than my waist. Before the age of 18, my father was already unbeatable among beastmen. With a fierce and brutal temperament, he possessed formidable strength. He is presently the first champion of Baiman, the leader of the Baiman Legion, and truly the king of the Baiman. Under his leadership, the Beastmen haven't suffered in battles for decades, and thus, within the Beastmen, his reputation rivals that of the Beast Emperor. Due to his esteemed position, he naturally had countless concubines. I was born from his union with a human woman he abducted. Among his 4 sons, I was the youngest and the one he disliked the most. My mother was a tragic woman, her origins shrouded in mystery. Though not yet 40, she seemed incredibly aged, her wrinkles and white hair an unwelcome presence. From her silhouette, you could tell she must have been a beauty in her youth. She hated my father and resented him, just as she resented me, because I was the son she bore through my father's violation. She never truly gained my father's affection, enduring exclusion and bullying from the other concubines. Only 4 years ago, when I gained power, did my mother finally have a house of her own. She rarely spoke. Whenever I saw her icy gaze, I felt a chill in my heart. I, now 16 years old, a hybrid of beast, demon, and human blood, the deputy commander of the Baiman Legion, stand at 2 meters tall. My human characteristics are most prominent. In the eyes of others, I'm undoubtedly a handsome young human, and my beast-like body and innate divine power wouldn't lead anyone to believe I'm a beast man. I resent my father, for he brought suffering to my mother. I resent my father. If it weren't for him, my grandmother wouldn't have died. Although her death granted me my current glory, I don't need it. I only want my grandmother, the one who cared for me, loved me, and cherished me. For years ago, I endured the mockery of everyone. No one treated me kindly. Behind my father's back, they called me a bastard. Apart from my eldest brother, who treated me normally, everyone else saw me as my father's worst son. My life was worse than some servants. Only my grandmother showed me kindness. She often prepared delicious food for me and kept me company. It was she who left a trace of warmth in my young heart. My grandmother's death was the greatest pain in my life. That day. Lei Xiang, come, Grandma has made your favorite braised chicken wings. I heard my grandmother's kind voice. Coming. I rushed into the kitchen, the rich aroma of meat filling the air. Grandma, I love you so much. Silly boy, eat quickly. Along with her smile, wrinkles gathered on my grandmother's face, the marks of time clearly evident. I picked up a chicken wing and ran outside the house, savoring the delicious scent while hopping around the yard. Because she preferred solitude, my grandmother didn't live with the clan. Since no one cared about me, I followed her out. In the Beastman realm, it's hard to find a place like this. The Beastmen prize survival of the fittest, with each Beastman potentially becoming prey to another. Of course, no Beastman would be foolish enough to come near my home for food, so it's peaceful here. A deep voice sounded behind me. Lei Xiong, where's your grandmother? Hearing the voice, my whole body shivered. 5 tall figures stood behind me, blocking the sunlight. The one in the middle was my father. Apparently, he came to see my grandmother. Accompanying him were 4 Baiman guards. My father's relationship with my grandmother wasn't good. Despite the alliance with the demon clan, my father didn't hold the demon clan in high regard, often saying only members of the fallen angel brigade were worthy, other demons were just freeloaders. He highly valued strength, and people like my powerless grandmother held no significance in his eyes. Among the beast men, women are merely appendages to men. Given how my father treated my grandmother, today's visit was puzzling. I whispered, "Grandma is inside." I was genuinely afraid of my father. Seeing my timid state, my father grew furious and slapped the chicken wing from my hand, yelling, "What's this appearance? Does this look like my son? I didn't raise a cowardly child like you." As I stared at the chicken wing covered in mud, tears involuntarily streamed down my face. Father slapped me to the ground and bellowed, "Cry, all you do is cry. Look at you, so scrawny, just like your dead mother. Your older brothers were hunting tigers and leopards at your age. But you can't even kill a chicken properly." He stomped on the chicken wing at his feet as he spoke. Grandmother heard the sounds from outside and rushed out. Seeing me fallen, her brow furrowed in concern. She helped me up and turned to my father, saying, "What are you doing? It's rare for you to visit, and yet you're scolding Shuang." Father snorted coldly and gruffly commanded, "Don't meddle. Someone, take this little troublemaker back and teach him a lesson for second brother." Second brother referred to my elder brother. If things were as they seemed, I'd probably be in for a severe punishment. My elder brother, Lei Hu, was known for his fiery temper. Grandmother shielded me and said, "Let it be. Don't trouble the child." Father swiftly grabbed me and tossed me to one of his subordinates. He spoke to grandmother, "I'll handle my son's discipline. I'm just passing through this time. If you want to live a few more years, don't meddle." With that, he turned to leave. Grandmother's face reddened with anger. She yelled, "Lei Ao, is this how you talk to your mother?" As she spoke, grandmother lunged at the Baiman guard holding me, attempting to retrieve me. But how could her frail form compare to the mighty Baiman creature? With a casual shove, the guard sent her sprawling, and unfortunately, her back struck a large stone. A cry followed, and blood gushed from her mouth. As if an icy gust swept over, my heart turned chillingly cold, and waves of frigid shivers enveloped me. I shouted, "Grandmother!" With a mighty struggle, my innate divine power finally burst forth. Despite being a mere 12-year-old, I broke free from the grasp of the colossal Baiman. I sprinted to grandmother's side, lifting her frail body and crying, "Grandmother, grandmother, how are you? Father, please save grandmother, I beg you." Grandmother's face turned pale. She gripped my hand and weakly said, "Don't plead with him. Let's go back to the house." The Baiman guard who had pushed grandmother aside dropped to one knee. He glanced at her, then turned to father, saying, "King Lei Ao, I." Father glanced at grandmother indifferently and said, "Forget it. If she dies, she dies. She's already lived a long life. Have someone bring money to bury her." In his eyes, it was evident that grandmother meant less than a Baiman warrior. Hatred and anger burned in my eyes. I bellowed to the sky, and my blood surged. Suddenly, my brain felt feverish, and I charged at the assailant who had killed grandmother, much like a raging bull. The Baiman guard, caught off guard, tried to block my assault with one hand. My eyes turned blood red, even my previously light green hair shifted to deep red. My speed surged to over 5 times its normal pace, and with a thunderous impact, I sent the guard, who was twice my size, flying. I didn't stop. My body followed the airborne enemy, and my small fists pounded his abdomen with great force. The most unexpected thing happened. My fist actually pierced the guard's seemingly impenetrable skin. He roared in agony and struck me from top to bottom. Instinctively, my other hand lifted. In midair, three hands of drastically different sizes collided, producing a sound like shattering leather. My hand didn't break. Despite my frail form, I managed to withstand the blow. However, my foot had sunken deeply into the ground. Kill. With a loud roar, my entire body trembled. A tremendous surge of energy erupted from me, rustling leaves and grass around me. With a resounding bang, the guard's torso exploded outward from the point where my fist had pierced, creating a half-meter-wide hole. He seemed beyond salvation. Blood sprayed over me, and his entrails spilled out like a shattered watermelon, none of it intact. The towering Baiman guard staggered back while I stood motionless. Only my hair gradually returned to its verdant hue. All of this occurred in an instant, leaving Father and the three guards shocked by this extraordinary transformation. Father mumbled, Lei Xiang has gone berserk. It's been 100 years since a Baiman could go berserk. Even Father's immense strength couldn't trigger berserker mode. A berserk Baiman could swiftly amplify their strength several-fold. King Lei Ao, what should we do? One of the guards asked. Father's excitement overshadowed any sorrow for the fallen guard. He said with a trace of glee, take Lei Xiang away. He's exhausted. Bury your comrade and leave that old woman to her fate. I gradually regained consciousness, not knowing how much time had passed. Grandmother, how are you? My body felt exceptionally weak and painful, especially my left hand, which throbbed as if fractured. It lay motionless beside me, devoid of any strength. I realized I was in my room at Father's residence. Struggling, I got up and made my way to the door, leaning on the wall as I stepped outside. The night was pitch black, mirroring my somber mood. It was already evening. I had no idea what happened to grandmother. As I was about to leave the room, a wave of weakness surged over me, causing me to sway and collapse onto the ground. Lei Xiang, why did you get down from the bed? Come on, let's go back and rest. A tall figure entered the room and lifted me up in his arms. I opened my eyes and saw that it was my big brother, Lei Long, who had a somewhat tolerable relationship with me among the Baiman. Big brother, I beg you, please take me to see grandmother. She's about to die, I pleaded tearfully. My big brother looked at the sky, nodded, and said, all right, but you must come back before dawn. Okay, let's go quickly. As long as I could save my grandmother, anything was fine. My big brother's towering figure was no different from a withered grass when he held me. Soon, we arrived at grandmother's house under the cover of the night. Grandmother! I cried out in anguish. Grandmother was still lying in the same place. My big brother put me down, and I crawled to grandmother's side, lifting her frail upper body. The dew had soaked through her clothes. I shook her gently, Grandmother, wake up, please wake up. Grandmother's cracked lips moved, and her eyes slowly opened. When she saw it was me, she smiled faintly. She tried to reach out and touch my head, but her weakness prevented her. Her hand only lifted halfway before falling back down. Child, you've finally come to see your grandmother. It's not in vain that grandmother cared for you, she coughed, spitting out a bit of blood. I held grandmother's hand against my cheek, tears wetting my clothes. I cried, Grandmother, please don't talk. Rest for a while, you'll be fine. Grandmother smiled kindly and said, silly child, grandmother knows her own body. Help me back to the house. Somehow, I mustered the strength to lift grandmother. With unsteady steps, I carried her back to the house. My big brother, understanding the situation, didn't follow us. I placed grandmother on the bed and myself collapsed at the bedside, gasping heavily. Grandmother gently stroked my head and looked at me with affection. She spoke intermittently, Xiang. Grandmother's most worry is about you. Promise grandmother to become a strong person. Live well. Don't blame your father too much. Orcs are like this. They only worship strength, with no family affection. Tears had soaked my clothes completely as I tightly held grandmother's wrinkled hand. I sobbed, Grandmother, please don't say anything. You'll be fine, you must be fine. Grandmother's trembling hand reached under her pillow and took out a thin booklet, blushing slightly. This is the treasure of the demon race. A copy of the demon heaven technique. I stole it years ago for revenge. Only those with royal demon bloodline can learn it. You must learn it well. After mastering it, you can transform into a fallen angel. Only the strong can survive. Don't let your father know. I cried out, "Grandmother, grandmother," my voice echoed through the roof. I placed the booklet she gave me into my embrace and fainted. When I woke up, I was back in my own room. My big brother was by my side, saying, "Grandmother has been properly buried. Don't worry. Come, eat something." Now, nothing seemed important to me. My only reliance had left, so what meaning was there left for me? My eyes were empty as I stared at the wall. A loud sound came from outside. My big brother furrowed his brows. What a loud thunder. Looks like a heavy rain is coming. Ignoring my injuries, I walked out, looking at the pouring raindrops. Gradually, the rain grew heavier, washing over me. Through the mist of rain, I seemed to see grandmother's kind face again. I lunged forward, but there was nothing there. My big brother quickly supported my mud-stained body and brought me back into the house. And so, I spent the next 7 days in a daze. I survived thanks to the food my father forcibly fed me. Later on, I regained my clarity. Grandmother's words before her death became my endless motivation. You must promise, grandmother, to become a strong person. Only the strong can survive. I had to become strong, an unparalleled strong individual. Thanks to my special ability to enter a state of frenzy, my father began to value me. Since then, he personally guided me in my training. I was no longer the naive child from before. No matter what, I couldn't change my determination to become an unparalleled powerhouse. From then on, I buried my hatred deep within my heart. Father passed down his most prized, heavenly thunder armor technique to me. It was a type of technique akin to chi control, mainly focused on defense. With the inherent physical attack and defense power of the Baiman, along with our natural resistance to magic, our ancestors developed this technique to further enhance our strengths. When practiced to a certain level, it could create a defensive shield similar to a chi barrier. If humans were to practice the heavenly thunder armor, it would at best be a mediocre technique. But for us Baiman, it was entirely different. Grandfather, for instance, used this technique to block a dragon knight's attack and seized the opportunity to kill him and his dragon, earning an immortal achievement. The heavenly thunder armor had 3 stages. The first stage involved internal cultivation, gradually refining one's physique and enhancing the body's immunity. My father said that this first stage was crucial, a process akin to rebirth. This was a phase I'd spent over 4 years completing. By the second year, my extraordinary aptitude began to show. Despite my small stature, my strength rivaled or even exceeded that of other Baiman my age. Now, after completing the first stage and my bodily transformation, my power was catching up to that of several elder brothers. The second stage was the outward projection of the formed chi to create a protective shield capable of withstanding various attacks. I had just begun this stage. The third stage involved enhancing the second stage, using the developed chi to attack enemies. My father had already reached this stage. His mighty power allowed him to smash anyone's head within a 10-meter radius using the heavenly thunder armor. Even a dragon knight couldn't threaten him if their numbers were lacking. Thanks to my rapid progress, I was now appointed as the vice leader of the Baiman Legion, alongside my elder brothers. In truth, I had a title without real power. All authority was in the hands of my elder brothers. I only needed to practice daily. With no interest in commanding the army, I enjoyed my leisure. During the day, I persisted in practicing the heavenly thunder armor, and at night, it was an ideal time to train in the demon heaven technique. Compared to the heavenly thunder armor, the demon heaven technique was much more intricate and harder to grasp. It was a blend of magic and martial arts. The demon heaven technique was divided into 9 levels, grouped into 3 tiers. Each tier had 3 levels. Advancing a level was tremendously difficult but led to significant power improvement. Each tier also brought about new changes, facilitating qualitative leaps. As per the book, breaking through to the third level of the first tier allowed for the transformation into a fallen angel. After this transformation, all abilities would double. This was the middle level of demonic power. Upon completing the transformation, practitioners would gradually become masters of dark magic, their proficiency skyrocketing. When reaching the sixth level of the second tier, one could mutate into a four-winged fallen angel, a power only possessed by the demon emperor and his chief guards. The third tier's ninth level was an unreachable realm, achieved only by the legendary archdemon Lucifer, a six-winged fallen angel. Unfortunately, the copy grandmother gave me did not contain the training method for this final level. Regrettably, after 4 years of practice, I had just entered the second level. Since practicing the demon heaven technique, I found myself preferring solitude and disliking crowds. I enjoyed wearing black clothes, and the dark power from the technique was undoubtedly formidable, although each usage left my heart growing colder. I could already use basic dark magic like confusion and corruption with the dark power. The dark magic derived from the demon heaven technique surpassed the usual dark magic practiced by dark wizards in both purity and strength. With less risk, using dark magic could lead to backlash. The challenge was the intense difficulty of practice, in my experience. Night fell once more, and I sat cross-legged on the bed, focusing the dark energy within me. The darkness surrounding me felt like a dear friend, constantly providing dark energy. It took me 2 hours to cycle the energy according to the second tier's technique. I felt a slight improvement. Exhaling slowly, I got up from the bed and looked at the moonlit night outside. Loneliness washed over me. I was surprised by this sensation. Could I have practiced the demon heaven technique incorrectly today? I thought about it, but I couldn't find any mistakes. I stepped out into the courtyard and surveyed my surroundings to ensure no one was present. I quickly left the house and ventured into the open field. Inside the house, I felt trapped like a caged bird. The open air was more comfortable. The cold night wind, accompanied by dewdrops, brushed gently against my clothes. The icy sensation was oddly soothing. The dark magic within me naturally began to flow. Suddenly, I felt a surge of strength throughout my body, an urge to release it. I planted my left foot forward, pushed off with force, and with a swift motion, I shot up from the ground. Focusing my strength into my right fist, I struck the ground with a loud thud. The impact created a web of cracks over a meter in radius, followed by a deep boom as a half-meter deep hole formed. I utilized the rebound force to glide to the side, admiring my astonishing achievement. It was as if all my grievances were vented through that punch, leaving me feeling relieved. I gasped heavily several times, the annoyance I'd felt having dissipated without my noticing. Just as I turned to head back, an instinctual warning alerted me of danger. Since I began the demon heaven technique, my senses had sharpened significantly. I instinctively activated my chi and tightened my fist. In a deep voice, I commanded, "Who's there? Come out." In response, a torrential energy surged forth, a massive fist accompanied by gales of wind growing larger. The wind rustled the grass and trees nearby. I felt trapped like a cornered beast, a strong sense of crisis urging me to action. I lowered my waist, pushed off with my left foot, and shouted, "Ha!" as I struck the oncoming fist with all my might. This was an attack my father had taught me. With our immense strength, we should use heat-in collisions to maximize our advantage. All fancy techniques were pure fabrication, a one-punch victory was the best strategy for us. 2 fists, one large and one small, mine, collided in midair. An overpowering force radiated from the opposing fist, propelling me backward 5 steps. My right hand ached intensely. Yet, the opponent didn't halt. After forcing me back, they immediately soared into the air, fist poised to strike again.